Hello and welcome to the Full FX Unfiltered. My name is Colin Lambert. I'm publisher of the Full FX, and this edition is in association with CME Group. And I'm delighted to be joined by an old friend, Paul Houston, Global Head of FX at CME. Paul, nice to see you as always.
Yeah, and you, Colin. Nice to see you.
We are talking ahead of the launch of Spot Plus, which I guess from my point of view is one of the bigger launches of recent years. Obviously, so you've been through, I guess what we would traditionally call beta testing, etc., mock trading. Have you learned anything from the process that actually maybe has surprised you?
Yeah, there's a couple of things. One is the take-up or the demand. We have about 50 firms in new release, so 50 separate institutions. So given the resource constraints in the market today, we're pleasantly surprised that it is of interest to the marketplace. And that also includes about 8 or 9 vendors. So half of those firms are certified now, ready for go live. So that's one positive. We've also seen a renewed interest in EBS Market.
Okay.
So as you know, with Spot Plus, we offer EBS Market and Spot Plus connectivity together, either through the workstation or API. So it's 2-for-1 access, for want of a better description.
I was going to say, yeah. It's where we get to the Tesco ads and other supermarkets
exactly.
are available.
Trying to avoid comparisons to supermarkets.
Yes.
But and then I guess the third thing we've learned is Spot Plus. The use case of Spot Plus has really been about, from banks, has been about taking futures liquidity in spot form. But many banks, when they've tested, or at least a few banks when they've tested, have found that they can also post passive interest into the spot pool. And we've seen more participants test that functionality.
That's quite interesting, isn't it? Because I say it wasn't something I would have associated with Spot Plus on the initial, I guess, diagrams.
Yeah, so the implication works both ways.
Yeah.
So and it also converts the spot passive bid or offer into futures conventions, and vice versa, futures into spot.
Yeah. So I mean, obviously, 50 institutions is a very good number. I would suggest. It must be down to the value proposition. Yeah. What is that value proposition for traders?
Yeah, so just to remind you, Spot Plus is a new spot marketplace, and it provides connectivity to the FX futures marketplace for the first time. So one of the main attractions is actually accessing liquidity from the futures marketplace in spot form. As you appreciate, not everyone can access futures liquidity in futures form, but it does have a lot of attractions. We have 1,200 institutions trading futures, and many of those institutions only trade their FX in futures form. So it's a unique differential liquidity. I mentioned passive liquidity. I'll mention it again. It's really a value add is for customers or participants in the Spot Plus pool to place passive bids and offers in smaller sizes and in decimals. So that's a complement to the primaries. They do that in the primaries today, but it's in those smaller sizes and in those finer tick increments. And then another value add is for the FX Link participants. As you know, FX Link sits in the middle and is key to that implication between futures to spot or spot to futures. And it will add more flow to the FX Link marketplace, but also gives the market makers an FX Link price improvement with the differential with the ticks between Spot Plus and futures.
Oh, okay, right. And I guess, from my point of view, being an old trader, I look at it, the benefit is, and this does talk to the passive interest a little bit. You're talking about bringing liquidity together, which would be 150 to 180 yards a day.
Yep.
If you look at typical monthly ADV, there's more chance of actually getting that match on a passive order, isn't there? When you've got that sort of size coming through the market.
Yeah, absolutely. There are a lot more participants. I should also add about one of the benefits is really around the all-to-all. It's access. Of course, it's access to another club. It's an all-to-all marketplace, but we have a CCP model. And that may be better or easier to access for smaller participants who are not encumbered by some of the bilateral credit constraints on the primaries.
Yeah, and actually that was, I guess, a point I wanted to ask you about as well, is obviously with 50 firms you've got a broad spread. But is there really a target demographic? I hesitate to use the word like gap in the CME client base that you think actually this would really work for that demographic?
Yeah, so the target demographic, at least the take-up, has been from regional banks and institutional buy-side. And it's predominantly been regional banks.
Yeah.
So if you look at that 50, the majority is regional banks. We've seen some interest from banks in Canada, Australia, UK, attracted by the liquidity in the Commonwealth currencies, for example.
Yep.
But that's a target demographic.
Which has always been very good in futures.
Yeah. Exactly.
And it brings them to it, yeah. So overall, you mentioned FX Link there. Obviously, you've mentioned EBS Market. We have the core futures and options, FX futures. Where do you think Spot Plus will fit into the CME Group FX product suite?
Yeah, so it's around our ethos about bringing the FX markets together. We'll offer a centralized access. So Spot Plus sits alongside EBS Market. It sits alongside our futures and options. It's on the same Globex technology. It has the same accessibility. I mentioned you can access it via the EBS API, the workstation, but also you can access it through the futures API. And we've also have combined legal access. So for EBS users, it's the same legal agreements. Spot Plus also brings new data. So it brings real-time market data in spot form. And we've packaged that with our EBS Ultra offering. Okay. So it's available free of charge for our EBS Ultra participants. And also in the future, it does or potentially facilitates more data offerings, so we can consolidate our data and offer FX data offerings to users that don't necessarily use our CLOBs, but could use our data to add value in other areas. And then finally, in terms of liquidity, in terms of the liquidity profile, Spot Plus we feel is complementary to EBS. It adds more currency pairs. We talked about the Commonwealth, yep. We talked about Mexican peso. But also in the G3, it does add a different liquidity profile, a complementary liquidity profile at different times of the day.
Yeah, yeah. I think the interesting thing for me, as you mentioned there, is that target demographic. Those regional banks, the institutional buyer side. It strikes me there's also going to be more benefits for maybe those top 10 LPs that are obviously already with CME. But I guess they get a broader access to a broader client base in those currency pairs.
Yeah, exactly. They can trade. We've already outlined that they can trade passively. Some of them are joining FX Link. Yeah. So there are a number of options for them to join the marketplace.
Yeah. So finally, Paul, can't let you go without asking you about the ambitions for the platform. Obviously, we need something that I can argue with you about next year or the year after or 5 years down the road. What are the ambitions for Spot Plus?
So I think broadly we've said we want to bring the markets together, offering centralized access. We feel and we hope that it would give some virtuous effect to all our marketplaces by extending the network, broadening the network. It should be beneficial to EBS users, beneficial to our futures marketplace. We talked about the implication moving both ways, and also beneficial to FX Link. I think in terms of new products, it's premature to talk about extending Spot Plus, but we would see how we're going, but we'd look to extend to other currency pairs. And then potentially in the future look at, say, more hybrid trading modalities that could link into Spot Plus as futures do today. Yeah,
and I guess there's always these crosses and stuff like that. The product suite is probably potentially unending.
Yeah, there's just a case of prioritising that and actually getting the product out the door first.
Yeah, which is always a good place to start.
Yeah.
As always, Paul, great to talk to you. Thanks for filling us in on that. I wish you good luck with the new project.
Yeah, thanks, Colin.
And
good to speak.
Thanks everyone for watching, and we'll be back again very soon.